Well, hello everybody. Welcome back to For the North. I am PJ. I'm here in Wisconsin.
I'm Chris in Minnesota, and today is a great day to have ICE. Just leave us alone. We're all for immigration enforcement if it's done with due process, but what they're doing now is not due process. So I said what I said. I'm gonna use this platform to advocate for those who definitely need it most, and those are the people that are being victimized by, quite frankly, a uncivil federal group of thugs. And that's putting it nicely. There's a lot of other words I could have used there, but yeah. I'm putting it nicely. I'm saying leave people alone unless you have a reason to arrest them and you have a warrant.
Exactly.
Signed by a judge.
Yeah.
Not one of the DHS forms, but a warrant signed by the judge.
Yeah, but yes, due process, very important. Proper immigration enforcement, very important to the process of our democracy. Someone in the administration needs to take note of that. Thank you very much, and that's all I'll say about that.
Yeah, and we'll move on to something that makes PJ a little bit less angry, but it's up there with the things that irritate him is Packers playoff losses. So PJ, walk me through what happened.
Well, so I'm gonna say this first. I am not surprised. We discussed it a little bit when we recorded this brilliant, preview of the game, and then someone, the producer of this show, forgot to record that part of it. But what I did say in that preview is that I'm not going to be surprised if the Bears come out and they win this game that they played against the Packers on Saturday night. Playing division opponents in the playoffs is certainly a recipe for heartbreak either way that it falls, whether it was going to be the Bears fandom if they lost to the Packers, whether it was going to be the Packers fandom if they lost to the Bears. From the get-go of the game, I don't think I ever truly felt like the Packers had a comfortable hold on this game, like they were going to run away with it. After the first half, I felt pretty confident, I'll say that, but there's still a part of me that in the back of my mind said missing a field goal at the end of the half was going to come back to bite us, like it always does in every heartbreaking Packers playoff loss in the last 2 decades, right? But I really liked what the Packers did in building a big lead and being aggressive with the play calling. They picked their spots to take their shots, and Jordan Love was playing smart football and making the reads and throwing to open wide receivers and really kind of dominating the first half of that football game. Jordan Love and Romeo Doubs, Christian Watson, that whole Packers offense looked phenomenal. And in the back of my mind, when we missed the field goal at the end of the half, I go, that's going to come back to bite us. We're going to come out in the third quarter flat. We need to put this team away. We need to get the ball after half, go down and score, whether that's a field goal, whether that's a touchdown, and put the nail in the coffin for Chicago. That did not happen, and the fourth quarter, we then enter the fourth quarter where Chicago proceeds to kick field goal after field goal and then score 2 touchdowns. And the Packers defense, as we've discussed, has been horrible. And Packers fans are staring at a stunning loss, another fourth quarter comeback for Chicago, and a stunning loss, a heartbreaking loss for the Packers. So I more think of this as a Packers loss than I do a Chicago win. Credit to Chicago for the way they played down the stretch. They found ways to make big plays in the fourth quarter, and they've been very good at doing that all year. But so many things went wrong for the Packers in the second half. A conservative play calling, stagnant offense, and not really scoring until it was too late in the fourth quarter. And then their defense, the Packers defense, which has been a liability since Micah Parsons went down, being an absolute liability in a playoff game in the biggest moment of the season. So kind of a heartbreaking way to end it, honestly. A 5-game losing streak for the Packers and a lot of really big question marks going into the offseason now for them. I know that was quite a lot to digest that I just gave, but ripping off the Band-Aid, that was ugly for the Packers in the second half and the fourth quarter of that football game on Saturday. So,
yeah, I think you put it. I think you put it really well. You know what? I didn't necessarily watch the game live, but I was following it for the sake of our podcast. And then I was like, oh, hey, 21-3. I was like, okay, PJ's pretty happy right now, going into halftime. And then all of a sudden I'm like, how do you not have defense going into the fourth quarter? Because I looked at third quarter, I was like, okay, like they still seem like they're doing pretty well. Then all of a sudden, it's a matter of you could argue that it's the play calling ability on defense in the fourth quarter, along with the ability to, quite frankly, not pick up first downs at all in that second half for the Packers. They had one good drive.
One good drive, yeah.
One good drive. Yeah, and when you're up by that much, the name of the game is you can run the football, but you also have those short, dumb passes to get the first down, and they just weren't doing that. Like, it kind of looks like I watched some of the highlights, and I watched a little bit, an abbreviated version of that second half, and just scratching my head, it kind of reminds me of the Browns game earlier this year, where that was a game that the Packers should have won, should have tied up. Granted, that game was, back and forth, more interesting to watch.
Yeah.
Throughout, the entire thing. But this game just, it just had a feel in that second half of, the Packers are coming out too confident. We saw it with the Atlanta Falcons and, however long that was, whichever Super Bowl that was.
I think that was 2016, 2017 now.
I was going to say it against the Patriots. And when you come out too confident that you've won the game, especially when there's a lot of game left to be played, 21-3 really isn't that much if you can't keep putting points on the board. You don't even need to score that many touchdowns. Just make every drive a scoring drive after that.
Yeah.
You kick 3-4 field goals, that game's a different game.
Yeah.
You make 3 or 4 field goals, that game's a different game. And you even scored that one touchdown that they had. That game is entirely different. You get to make sure that you have the win secured, and you get to make sure that you played the game smart. I'm not on the fire Matt LaFleur train quite yet, but if I am going to, say if there are a couple seats that are hot in the NFC North, I would say actually there's 3. It's Dan Campbell, it is Kevin O'Connell, and it is Matt LaFleur. All those seats are hot right now, depending on what they can do in the next season. Now, if for Matt LaFleur, and we'll talk about the other coaches on another podcast once the season ends. For Matt LaFleur specifically, how do you move on from this? Well, I'd say, like, if you're the Packers organization, your biggest need in the draft is basically anywhere on defense.
Anywhere. Yeah, you name it. I think the big problem that I saw after Micah Parsons went down was there was just not an answer. There was not a, there's like, at least with other defenses, there is like that B guy, that second guy that you can go to that you're like, okay, you might not be our top tier, highest paid guy, but at least we have a safety valve or someone that we can go to get reliable pressure, or we have a corner or a safety that we know is going to be absolutely shut down and help this defense stay afloat. And once they lost Micah Parsons, the Packers defense was just kind of a ship in the frickin' lost in the fog. They had really no pass rush that I could conceive of or see in any kind of way in the 5 games down the stretch that they managed to lose all of, right? The corners were god-awful, and the safeties might be the only highlight. Like, the safeties and the linebackers were really the only highlight that I could think of out of that defense, but you cannot ask the safeties and the line and the linebackers to be the stopgap for your entire defense. It's you just can't play that way. You need a pass rush. You need something beyond Micah Parsons. I just there's a
you need something. You just need consistency. Like, you look at I mean, so the Vikings defense also injured comparatively, comparing them. Once they were healthy, though, like, they had answers for everything. Like, you didn't just have one guy. You had a bunch of different guys coming together. Granted, it wasn't against all great teams, but it was against, other NFL teams where you're like, hey, they come out and they're like, hey, you know what? We're still going to finish the season strong no matter what happens.
Right.
And they did that. Like, I don't know how hard it is for an organization, especially the Packers organization, who did nothing in free agency to help their defense, realize that, like, you need both. You need complementary offense and defense to win a championship game.
Yeah.
And that's going to make for some other matchups that are outside of the NFC North. That might make a game on Saturday very interesting.
Yeah.
But I don't understand why the Packers didn't address more of that in free agency during the offseason. Honestly, you could have traded a few guys.
You could have.
A couple picks. You could have traded a couple guys for, like, some even, like, B-tier players and had something. But, like, just to be like, oh, Micah Parsons, like, is the end-all be-all. I'm like, that's going to come back to bite him in the end.
Yeah, and I think it was a kind of there was a lot of things that contributed to this defense underperforming and not being built the way it ought to be built. First of all, I'm going to place there's a big kind of the big obvious thing is that the Packers went out and they spent a lot of capital, 2 first-round picks, a ton of money, $55 million, and they traded away Kenny Clark, who had been a good run stopper, to get Micah Parsons. So that's first and foremost. You kind of are pushing all your chips to the center of the table and saying, okay, we went and got this premier pass rusher, this blue chip player that we really think is going to shift the, kind of table on how our defense plays. The second thing that happened is Brian Gutekunst did not go out in free agency and make moves to shore up the defensive line. If you don't go and get Micah Parsons, the options were Kenny Clark and Devontae Wyatt. And while they've been good players, they're not premier pass rushing, run stopping players. The other problem that I see is that there was no attempt either in the draft or free agency to build depth of any kind behind these guys that they had as starters on the line. So if Micah Parsons went down, if Devontae Wyatt went down, if Lucas Van Ness went down, if any of your linebackers went down, your corners went down, they were incredibly thin depth-wise. And their second guy that came in behind their starters this year for the Packers just got awful horrible on defense. So I place a lot of the blame on the front office pushing all of their chips into the center of the table to go get Micah Parsons, which, good, okay, I like that move. However, I point the finger and blame the front office and Brian Gutekunst and Ed Policy and Matt LaFleur for not going out in free agency or in the draft and getting some sort of depth piece, whether it be on the offensive line or the defensive line, your corners, your linebackers. There was just no depth at all this year. And so it was an incredibly talented roster, but an incredibly fragile roster. It was, the whole year, and we discussed this in previous episodes, the Packers were one injured player away from disaster the whole year. We saw it. They lost Tucker Kraft, and all of a sudden the offense started to have these struggles. They lost, 2 of their top linemen. That really affected how they protected Jordan Love and how he stayed healthy through the end of the year. He was out with a concussion for 2 games because of poor offensive line play, and then you lose Devontae Wyatt, you lose Micah Parsons, you had multiple corners on injured reserve. By the end of the season, there was 16 players on injured reserve, and all of a sudden, you went from a really talented roster with deep playoff run aspirations to, are we going to even get out of the wild card round?
Right. It was very much like Kirk Cousins' first or second year with the Vikings against San Francisco, who happened to make a deep playoff run that year.
Yeah.
But all credit to San Francisco. But it was something where, actually, you know what? They made the Super Bowl that year.
They did. I was going to say, I was like, what?
It was a long time ago. There were a lot of injuries there. Before we get too far into it, because that'll come into grading here.
Yeah.
Factor into the grading here in a little bit. Could I also say, the Bears, it was also a tale of 2 halves, where Caleb Williams comes out in the second half. Not even 2 halves. It's that fourth quarter. He comes out and he's like, all right, I'm going to play football now. And then all of a sudden he just starts slinging it around. You know what? 24 for 48, 361 yards. 2 touchdowns. I mean, granted, he had 2 interceptions.
But I mean,
back ones, but like he came out and he was like, you know what, I'm just gonna sling the ball and see what happens until the Packers stop me, and then the Packers didn't stop him.
Right. Well, and I think if Caleb Williams and Ben Johnson could figure out how to play the way that they do in the fourth quarter in all of the quarters, they would be an unstoppable force. And to the Bears' credit, they have been incredibly talented, and their offense has been doing amazing things. But I want to see the Bears put this all together. I want to see them play a full game and from the get-go dominate an opponent the way that we know that they probably can. And we haven't seen it yet. And I want to see the fourth quarter version of Caleb Williams in the first through third quarters. Because, we discussed this. We said this a few minutes ago. If the Packers managed to do anything in the third going into the fourth quarter of that game against the Bears, they are staring a playoff win in the face. They're going on to, they're going on the road to play Seattle. That's the plain and simple of it, right? So, it's I don't know. It's frustrating. I think there's going to be big changes coming down the road.
For both teams.
For both teams.
The defense for both teams just needs to change, because what the Bears are doing now will not be sustainable in the long term.
No.
I can guarantee you that.
Yeah.
I like what they're doing from a football perspective in terms of turning the team culture around, Ben Johnson coming in, getting that offense under control. And he's literally the only coach who could possibly miss the playoffs by 1 or 2 games next year and still have the job.
Oh, yeah. For sure.
The NFC North right now. He is the only one who is not on the hot seat.
He has the longest leash in terms of what they're going to allow performance-wise for the Bears next year, because the Bears are going to be playing a first-place schedule. They're going to be coming off of whatever the playoff run ends up being, right? Like, Ben Johnson has done exactly what he was supposed to do going to the Bears. He's turned around that culture. They are year 2 of Caleb Williams. He looks phenomenal, incredibly comfortable in that offense. They are winners of 11 games. They're now playing in a divisional round playoff game. Like, it's a complete 180 from what we were at last year, talking about the Bears. Granted, we weren't doing this podcast last year, but both you and I know we were watching football games, and we were talking about how cruddy the Bears and that organization and the direction that they were going in was. It was a completely different conversation that we were having.
Yeah, and then Eberflus just got fired from the Cowboys a couple days ago.
Right.
Right. But all congratulations to the Bears for moving on.
Yeah.
Wednesday we'll have a tough opponent, but before on Sunday versus the Rams. But before we get into that, let's talk about the Packers grade. If I'm looking at it from this year, from the expectations that were placed on them, and they were high.
Very high.
Jordan Love played pretty good. I'm going to give Jordan Love himself a B to a B plus. I'm not going to give him an A, just because there were games that he could have won and made better decisions. I think he has a potential.
Oh yeah,
but he wasn't quite there yet. Yeah. And to be fair to him, there were a lot of injuries on the offensive line. He was running for his life some games. He just needed to make a couple smarter decisions where I would have, liked to see where, if I was a coach on the Packers, I would like to see him make some of those easy throws versus going towards the appealing throw. which is easier. I mean, easier said than done. How many times have either you or I, lost a Madden game because you want to throw it downfield, but it's not
hubris. Sometimes hubris gets you in Madden. I know it's gotten me multiple times.
I mean, it's not the same thing, but it's you know what? I understand it.
Yeah.
It didn't hurt their season overall in the end. And if I'm going to rate them on a scale from A to F, I'm gonna go with a B for the offense and a B minus for the defense. B minus for the defense solely in the terms that they didn't really step up against a few teams that they should have probably put away early. B for the offense for the same reason, but they played a little bit better down the stretch, so I'm going to give them a little bit higher of a grade than what their defense has.
Okay.
What are your assessments on that?
Yeah, so I definitely agree with your assessment about Jordan Love. There were flashes, there were moments of we saw this fourth year of Jordan Love being a starter. He really came along, I think, in his development in a lot of areas. There were moments where we saw him make the smart throw and play really phenomenal games. There are examples, in the first 3 weeks of the season, even if you exclude losing to the Cleveland Browns, but against the Steelers, against the Lions, against the Vikings. So there were these moments, these flashes. He came along in a lot of his developmental areas that I wanted him to as a fourth-year starter. But then there were some moments where I was just so mad and so frustrated. I think Jordan Love is certainly not the problem in this offense. He's going to continue to develop and make smarter decisions. What I do want to see out of Jordan Love going into year 5, even into year 6, as we go on with Jordan Love, I would like to see him become more of a vocal leader. I want him to be a vocal presence in the locker room and take on more of a leadership role and start to develop that ability that elite quarterbacks have, where you are the captain of the offense and you're kind of boosting the morale and encouraging the guys and really taking young guys aside and helping them get into this offense and understand it. Overall, from a offensive perspective, Green Bay, as we said, this whole team had a very high expectations based off of the Micah Parsons trade and based off of the way we were talking about the offense in preseason going into the beginning of the season. I would give them, just based off of the way that the defense and the offense kind of gelled together and there was inconsistency all year, I'm going to give overall the Packers a grade of a C. There was potential, there were moments, but it just ultimately was disappointing. Too much inconsistency, too much disappointment for me to give them a super high grade and say it was a B. I think they're firmly kind of in a C minus to C plus kind of area for me. I think there's strides that need to be taken, specifically one that I'd really like to be taken. I think you are right. They keep Matt LaFleur. But one stride that I'd like the Packers to take is I would like a legitimate offensive coordinator to come in and call plays. I think Matt LaFleur needs to have play calling taken away and to have things taken off of his plate for this team to be successful going forward. I think you need to retain Jeff Hafley as your defensive coordinator, hire a real offensive coordinator that can call plays and take that off of Matt LaFleur's plate, and let Matt LaFleur stay, whether that's 1 year or 2 years or 3 years, whatever it is, get a deal done, keep Matt LaFleur in the building, and let him handle the big picture stuff. And I think that's going to shift the culture and the success of this team, hopefully. But this is going to be a big offseason where I think some needed, necessary changes are going to be made. and we're going to see how that goes in the offseason. We'll discuss it more, obviously, but those are kind of my big hopes and my big thoughts on how the Packers grade out this year.
Okay, yeah, I can see that. Let's move on. Let's do a very quick preview of this upcoming game. So it's at Soldier Field, Bears versus Rams.
Yeah.
There is, I mean, in a way, it almost feels like an NFC matchup because Matthew Stafford, one of the best quarterbacks in recent history to play in the NFC North, is I just feel like he has the Bears number, and he's going to come and tear it up with all the weapons that he has.
Yeah.
He has, I mean,
come on.
It's just like, as much as I don't like Puka Nacua for, different things that he's done off the field, he is a great receiver.
Yeah.
He also has a couple others that are great. I mean, they've got a good run game. Their defense is strong. They just seem like the more overall complete team. If I was to go with the second receiver, it would probably be Devontae Adams. And then, which, you'll be excited about. And then, I mean, Corum's going to get a few touches as well.
Yeah.
So it's, we'll see what happens. It's, weather could be a factor, but
yeah, it's supposed to.
I don't think Matthew Stafford is any, he's not, what do you call it? He's not a stranger to cold weather.
Right. I mean, for how many years? Nine. I mean, I can't remember how long he was with the Lions, but he was there nearly a decade, I want to say, and he went to Green Bay. He played in Chicago. At one point during his tenure, I know that the Vikings had an outdoor stadium because they played in TCF. So he's familiar with these cold environments. So I really disagree with the narrative that Matthew Stafford doesn't play well in cold weather games because he now went to LA. Like, oh, okay, come on. Like, the game, he has considerable playoff experience. We saw it when he took the Rams to the Super Bowl. We saw it last year where they nearly upset the Eagles on their way to the Super Bowl. He has, and granted, there weren't a lot of playoff games in Detroit, but there were a lot of NFC North battles that gives me the confidence in saying that this is a game that the Rams can easily go into Chicago and win. Especially if you play all four quarters. Like, you've got Puka Nacua, you've got Devontae Adams, Blake Corum, Matthew Stafford. Just on playoff experience alone from that group of individuals, you should be able to go and beat Chicago. They're
and their defense is just,
phenomenal. Their frontline defense.
It's better. Like, they should win it as long as they play, like you said, as long as they play all four quarters. I think they're fine as long as they, don't get too confident about the result and going into the locker room at half. They should be fine. I'm going to go with this game. You know what? I'm even going to predict that it's going to be a 10-point game. I'm going to go with, you know what? Not even 10. I'll go 9. 30-21.
30-20.
I think the cold weather might prevent, some higher scoring from happening, but I could be wrong. I mean, I would love to see, a back and forth game, but I don't know if that's going to happen, or I have a feeling it could go another way with the Rams defense, where they kind of steamroll the. But I want to say to Caleb Williams' credit, he is great at performing under pressure.
Yeah.
blitz. So, yeah, you just don't know what's going to happen in that. But I do, if I am going to pick a team with the better defense, with the better offense and offensive weapons, it's going to be the Rams, 30-21.
30.
And that's not even that's not a slight on the Bears and all they've done this season. That is simply just stating, like, I think the Rams are a better team, and that's what they're going to do on Sunday night.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. No, I agree with that sentiment very much. Rams are the better team. I think they have the more experienced coach, the more experienced quarterback. I also think a big factor in this that's not really being talked about in the same light as the weather factor. It's Ben Johnson's, as a head coach, his first time being in the divisional round as a head coach. It's Caleb Williams' first trip to the divisional round. I think there's a tendency, and we saw it against Green Bay, for Ben Johnson to make the emotional decision, to be more gutsy, and to make that call where it might not be the best call, but he's doing it because there's higher emotional stakes in the game. We saw it against the Packers when they went for it multiple times in plus territory or negative territory, and all of a sudden they didn't get a fourth down, and the Packers were put in prime field position. I think that might happen again this weekend against the Rams for the Bears, where Ben Johnson calls a little bit more of an emotional game plan than a smart game plan. I'm going to go Rams to win this. Devontae Adams, Puka Nacua have a huge day. I'm going to go 35-24. Rams win it over the Bears. And they really just put the nail in the coffin and don't let them ever have a chance in this game.
Okay, so we're kind of in the same boat. I think the Bears are going to hang on.
Yeah.
Unless there's some miracle. I mean, and there could be. It is the NFL after all. Any given Sunday.
I just think.
Go ahead.
Like I think the sand, the hourglass is running out of sand at this point. Like we've discussed this fact that, like, these amazing come from behind fourth quarter comeback victories, they're great, right? And it's dramatic and it's thrilling and it's, oh my God, look at Caleb Williams and Ben Johnson, and we're so mystified by the Bears and how they're doing this. I think the magic is going to run out, and I think this carriage turns back into a pumpkin, right? Like the Cinderella story, I think, has to come to an end, and at some point you can't just play one quarter of football if you're the Bears. Like, you're now getting into the divisional round where the teams and the competition are higher and the coaches that you're playing are better. It's just, at some point, the ball has got to end for Cinderella, I think. And I what I see is probably this is a close game where, the Bears can hang on for a long time, but I think the Rams pull away late. They make a big play. Puka Nacua or Devontae Adams finds a way to get open and make a big play and set them up for, a late fourth quarter score to really put this one away. That's how I see it, but could be wrong. We both could be absolutely dead wrong about that, but that's how I see it. How I envision it.
All right. Well, so there's two things we might be back with next week. We'll be back with a review of the game for sure. It's a 5:30 game. I like that.
Yeah, Sunday night football.
Yeah, we like early games. We like them around dinner time where we can sit and then eat our food and watch it.
We like that a lot. Us old folk,
So we'll be back with the evaluation of that game, and then either a prediction for the next game or a grade for the Bears, which it's gonna be tough. I'm determining how I want to grade it still, but stay tuned for that next episode.
I'm going to have to remove my bias from it.
You've been pretty. I mean, you were pretty good at that so far. So
Yeah, I've showed great restraint. Well, on that note, as Chris said, we will, either way, there will be another episode. We either give a, kind of end of season state of the union for the Bears, or we're talking about the NFC Championship. So we will see what comes of it after Sunday. So
yeah, all right. Signing off.
peace out, everybody.